Biggest challenges we're seeing in 2024 are largely around ransomware. The tactics are changing, the way that adversaries are getting initial footholds is changing, and so we have to be really aware of what's happening and tune our sensors to better defend there. I think the second thing that we're seeing trend-wise is around API security, and that's largely around developers, and so there's a lot of code being written and published and getting pushed out, and so whether it's supply chain and APIs, that's another huge focus area for this year.
Dave, you speak to a lot of cybersecurity leaders, a lot of CISOs. Would you say that this is in line with what you're hearing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I would say is I have a lot of respect for Steve and all the chief security officers. Sometimes you want to give them a hug because they're like goalies in hockey, right? You know, they get a million pucks thrown at them and they got to stop them all.
Yeah.
And it's so hard and it's a really difficult job. Most people don't realize just what a challenging job they have. But to what Steve was saying, you know, ransomware has become a bit of a cancer in the cyber community. We have so many ransomware operators now. There's so much capitalism behind it, so much anonymity behind it. It's a very difficult problem to solve. I also really agree with Steve's saying too. I mean, AI is bringing a whole new generation of threats that we got to watch for. And spear phishing, which has been the essence of kind of our world of threats, that used to just come on an email, sometimes with words spelled wrong, and it was easier to see. Yeah. Gen AI is now creating deep fakes and ways to do it, and not just through email, Trinity, but like through text, through WhatsApp, through any communication model you have. So you have to have your guard up, and you're ready to block everything now, and it's a different world and a very challenging world for chief security officers. So I have a lot of respect for him.
How do you, Steve, stay ahead of the curve, you know, and keep up with this ever-changing landscape?
One way is just partnering with young companies that are really solving these tough problems. As Dave mentioned, I mean, this is something that rapidly evolves, and speed actually really matters in today's day. You know, adversaries get in and they move quick, and so we have to be as fast, if not faster, to defend against them. And so partnering with young companies, giving vendors feedback about what they can do to improve, and really just helping communicate the needs of the practitioners that are actually doing the defense.
The term CISO is fairly new, only recently developed in recent years. So tell me about how that sort of changed the landscape, especially what you're seeing on the ground at RSA.
The elevation of the chief information security officer in the organization is equally as important, because when you start to look at the threat and the amount of damages that are happening in the cyber universe, it's measured in trillions.
Yeah.
So when you're a shareholder of companies that are public and they're getting breached, you can lose a lot of shareholder value.
Yeah.
So having boards aware of the cyber threat, having the chief information security officers briefing the boards more. And I'll give you a data point for a second. Only 1.4% of the Fortune 500 have cyber experts on the board. 1.4%. Yet we have these breaches every day. The average board spends 42 minutes a year on cyber, yet has all these threats. So when you start to look at the job that Steve has versus what the board's responsibility is, there's a little bit of a gap here. And so we got to close that gap.
How do you tackle that challenge, Steve? I mean, just such a small percentage is actually focused on cybersecurity, but yet we are seeing attacks every single second of every single day. How do you address those challenges?
As Dave mentioned, I think education is critical to this, not only for the executives in the company, but also boards. I think we're seeing a lot of regulatory oversight right now, a lot of conversation and public discourse that's really elevating the role of the Chief Information Security Officer.
And, you know, speaking of evolution, let's talk about the evolution of your role as a CISO. Obviously, it's a fairly new role, but how has that changed in terms of responsibility?
Well, talking to my peers, I think the big difference now is just talking about cybersecurity in the context of risk. You know, we understand that we can never drive that cybersecurity risk to zero.
Yeah.
And so it's making those trade-offs and really building out programs that support the business. And look, the threat landscape constantly evolves, it's changing, but so is the business. And so being able to speak business and then figure out the intersection of cybersecurity and the threat landscape, I mean, that's something that I think is really important.
And, you know, I want to talk to you both about the importance of bringing together the public and private sector when it comes to cybersecurity. Obviously, you have the private sector background, and, you know, you speak with a lot of CISOs in both public and private. So let's talk about the importance here.
Cyber's a team sport. Having the public sector and private sector, I can see the value in doing both and coming together. We know the threat actors talk about us, and so it's important for us to share amongst ourselves. And at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same threat actors.
I would just echo that a little bit more by saying we've made a lot of great progress in just the last few years. I mean, if you even look at the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, I mean, it was really only stood up in relatively recent times. And the U.S. Cyber Command has just been recently set up in recent times. So we have a lot of evolution to go, but we're making progress. Public-private partnership, not just our United States government with the United States private sector, but also our allies' governments working together.
Better together, right?
Better together.
Steve, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say I love that Dave uses the word community, because it really is, and forums like this and venues like this really elevate the conversation. We're very busy every day as security practitioners defending, so it's great to have an opportunity to step back for a minute and kind of look forward and see what's on the horizon. And the conversations are just fantastic, so thanks for doing that, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for coming too.
And thank you both for joining me today.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you,
Trinity.
Trinity.